Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the journey. I am Reverend Bobby, and today I have my friend Trojanelle Wilson. She's a spell of a woman, so she be doing a lot of stuff with me today. How are you, Tro?
I am fine and blessed and great to see you, even though it's video chat.
And while we are great in everything, remember to be great and subscribe to the channel. Gospel of Robert, capital GOSPELOF, capital ROBERT on the YouTube channel. You might have to put the @ in front to get to the page to subscribe. So, Trojanelle, tell us a little bit about you, a snippet.
Well, first of all, I want to encourage users to subscribe to this channel because I think that you'll find some real talk and some topics that are pertinent to wherever you are in your particular stage of life. So please subscribe to this channel. My name is Trojanelle. Bobby knew me as Bordenave because that was my maiden name, and Wilson. And I've been knowing Bobby over 50 years. So I guess that tells you how old I am, but I'm not at all ashamed of my age.
You just made 19, y'all.
I know that's right. I know.
Stuff.
But as he mentioned, I am an undergraduate degree. I got my undergraduate degree from Spelman College and in psychology and sociology. And I got a master's and EDS from Georgia State University in school psychology. And so my career was initially in corporate America for many, many years. And I went back because psychology was always my passion, and decided to train and get certified as a school psychologist. So I worked in the city schools of Decatur for probably 12 or 13 years before I retired. So I think that, God kind of led me back to my passion, even though I did enjoy my career in corporate America, working for Xerox, not a computer person like the Reverend Doctor, but on the customer support side. And then I worked for Bell South and Bell South Services. So that's a little bit, and I also been married for 50 years. And again, the Reverend knows my husband for 50 plus years. And we are blessed to have one daughter, and she's Dr. Terrenay Wilson. She is a dentist for the VA in New Orleans.
So when you came full circle back to your love, psychological stuff, because you be deep all the time, every second I've known you. Was it I know the corporate stuff was good and fulfilling, but was working with the children in the schools fulfilling to you?
Actually, it was a whole lot more fulfilling than working in corporate America, even though, I'm not disparaging my experiences in corporate America. It was I got to experience things that I never thought I would ever see in life. And I worked as a school psychologist. Of course, I work with students who are considered at risk and students that have to be evaluated to see if they need special support services. And I actually supported 3 elementary schools and the high school. And oddly enough, I didn't think I would like working at a high school because, teenagers have their challenges. But at the time, my child was a teenager, so that kind of helped me understand that
challenges.
And so, and I guess some of the things that I've learned is that people feel very stigmatized when they're in special education. At least Black people do. White people try to get their students in special education when they don't qualify to try to get advantages. So, the two groups see it very differently. And it's based upon their experiences, because Black people traditionally have had a very negative relationship with special education. So, and the kids were great. I might have worked a little longer, but one of the reasons I retired was because the parents had gotten more and more difficult and more entitled. And, I was spending more time preparing to go to court to defend why somebody didn't qualify versus, enjoying the time that I had with the children.
Now you had to do assessments to see if a child qualified for special education.
That's right, because the America for Disabilities Act and IDEA, which is the Individual Disabilities, right? That governs who qualifies by state regulations for special services.
And what did you see as one of the most prevalent things running through the people you evaluated as a qualifier, as something that would qualify them for the program?
Basically, I would say 3 areas. One is reading. You would be surprised the number of students across ethnic groups that can't read. I mean, and it was sort of mind blowing because, all of our cohorts, obviously they could read because they were in school at Morehouse and Spelman. But, I think part of it is the way the school system teaches reading. So that's one area. Reading was a big area. They had a learning disability, if you will, in reading. The other area was behavioral. A lot of behavioral referrals. And when you look at if the student qualified under behavior referrals, many times it was attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and that's not considered a behavioral disorder. That comes under a health impaired disorder.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Absolutely.
I didn't know that.
Well, at least in the state of Georgia.
Yeah. Because it was, I did school reform here, so we had a whole lot of different areas and stuff. Of course, I had to learn to read. Mommy and daddy were teachers. So reading was important. And no, I wouldn't be surprised, but the surprise is how they fall through the cracks. That's what surprises me. And what are some of the things you saw that helped facilitate that part, them falling through the cracks? And some call it the learning behavior, but learning up front wasn't supported, so they don't even know how to learn. What we do about those kinds of things?
Well, first of all, you're so correct. In terms of learning, you have to meet a student where they are, and every student doesn't learn the same.
That's the thing. That's
right.
The thing.
And some people are auditory learners, some people are visual learners. Now, everybody's a combination of these things.
Yes.
What I'm saying is that some people have more strength with auditory, others with visual, others with tactile. So that's the first thing. Getting teachers and parents to understand that you have to see what your child's learning style is. It's not that your child can't learn. And so that was one thing in facilitating things falling through the crack, because when we got in the later years with school psychology and they got to doing more interventions with students, some students as a result didn't qualify for special education because they didn't need it because the teacher was able to put forth the effective interventions. So that was one of the things. The other thing is, educating teachers about the way students learn and to change their teaching methodologies to individualize the instruction. And that's a lot to ask of teachers when you have 20 some kids in a classroom. So primarily, and also, I guess the other thing to help prevent students falling through the crack is to ensure that these students were identified and sent through the process. Because sometimes, particularly girls who have ADHD, they tend not to have the hyperactivity component. So they're kind of not making any disruptions in the class, and they get overlooked.
Yeah.
And they get overlooked. So pointing that out.
Yeah. I know girls struggle with some subjects. I don't know if it's a right brain, left brain thing, but when I was in Florida, I did GED. I taught GED, and the girls would really struggle with math and concepts and stuff, but we would get it worked out so they could get the GED. But the specialization, and I heard you say individual, working with the individual students instead of putting everybody in a pot takes a lot of effort. But I was talking to someone yesterday, and we both were able to pull out those teachers that made that special effort for not only us, but for the students in their classroom. And what kind of difference does that make when you have teachers that, care like that? Not saying that most teachers don't care, and I know they're overwhelmed, but when you get that one who touches you and brings you along in life, don't you think that's really, really important?
Well, I think it's so important, and the results are having, like you and I sit here today. As you said, everybody that I talk to can think of some special teachers that helped them along the way to see what their potential is, to see what the possibilities are. If you don't see what possibilities are, and many of us grew up in environments where we didn't necessarily see that, you don't know that exists. And so you have teachers who I think, see the vision for you until you're able to see it for yourself. And I think that's what makes the difference, they say if you dream it, you can achieve it. Well, you can't dream it if you don't even know that there's a possibility that it exists.
Yeah. One of the things I try to do with the kids, was turn them on to a lot of things. They didn't have to be interested in all of them, nor did I expect them to. But in turning them on to a lot of things, it gave them a different way to look at the world, which I think is important. But you were talking about the cognitive skills and stuff, and I've noticed that the spatial skills really sometimes need some extra help in developing. And what would you say would help develop spatial skills in, like you say, elementary and high school children?
Well, first of all, let me comment on how you said you helped children see, other aspects. That kind of exposure and support is critical. So I just wanted to comment on that. You are so on point with spatial skills. It wasn't until I became a school psychologist myself that I understood that my spatial skills was one of my lower cognitive areas. I think that some of the things that you can do to develop spatial skills are basic things like puzzles, make you, aware, even young babies, they have these things where you have to sort the blocks and the circles, even though you don't know what those geometric shapes are. So I think that, and then you can progress to other types of puzzles. That's very important. Another reason that a child might have some spatial skills issues is something that I learned actually from occupational therapists and physical therapists. They have a whole set of tools to help identify that and suggest ways to help a child improve in spatial skills. And spatial skills are very important to, like you were talking about, mathematics, because you have to be able to visualize where the numbers are, as well as understand the concept of numbers. The reason I know that I have spatial skills in the real world and how I can't parallel park because I can't judge. I mean, I do parallel park, but I'm not good at parallel parking. And it's not because I didn't have the opportunity or chances to parallel park. It's because I have difficulty visualizing spatially how much space there is in relationship to my car.
Yeah.
Another area functionally, you're going to laugh at this, when you store food, I never am able to determine the appropriate size container. So, it's either too small or too big. So I'm constantly washing containers, because it was the wrong size. And I mean, and that's all spatial. So it's funny, but as you get older, you learn how spatial deficits or other deficits impact your functionality and what you can do to cope with that.
But see, what it really is bringing out your true calling and skills as a dishwasher. See, look at it the right way.
I know that's right.
But it's like those things exist, and a lot of times we function without a whole lot of rigmarole about it. We just, you like my friend, she had to back out the garage and turn the wheel. I'm like, no, this isn't the kiddie seat in the car. You sit there, turn the wheel, just back out. You pull in, back out. But those kinds of things are kind of habitual and not real workarounds, but just part of who we are, that make us who we are. How comfortable you? Well, this is a stupid question to ask you. How comfortable are you in Trojan Ale?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that question, because first of all, one of the main things that's important in me understanding and feeling about who I am is that I'm constantly growing and learning. And when you grow and you learn, things change. If anybody knows me, they know that when they see me, I'm going to be who I am, regardless of which situation they see me in. I don't change who I am.
I know that. I've experienced it. I love it tremendously, y'all.
I know. And sometimes, I think it's a good thing, but other times, if I'm brutally honest, even if I'm trying to, sort of temper my choice of words, some people, can't take that, but that's okay, because as far as I'm concerned, that's part of their growth and development, but when I remember when I turned 50, I was like, I'm 50. This is grown as it gets. I can do what I want. Well, that's not true.
Right.
My mother was still alive when I was 50. And let me tell you, even at 50, I couldn't necessarily do what I want to do. I could, but of course, I wanted her, perspective and input.
But put a pin in that right there. You 50 years old, still got the respect and stuff for your mama we had young. That's an important part of our lives, isn't it?
I think respecting your mother and your other elders is very important because it sets a decorum for how you interact with other people.
Yeah.
You know, they modeled that behavior. Or in some cases, some people come from situations where it wasn't modeled by them, but then that makes them seek another way of doing it, if that makes sense. But yes, I mean, I think that is an important part of who we are. And you know, there are many things about aging that you can say we don't like. Okay, you froze for a minute and I wasn't sure we were still recording. But one of the things about aging that you come to appreciate is that, you know, you really are aware of those things about how respect for your elders have shaped who you are and what you do and how you go about doing it. It's difficult because, you know, I have a daughter. She's a millennial, and I'm immensely, you know, proud of her for who she is, not for what she does, but I'm of course proud of what she does. But you know, they act differently than we do.
Tell me more.
Well, you have some millennials as well. So
I don't know if I do or not because I asked, aren't you a millennial? And they go, officially. So I know not to ask any more than that.
Oh yeah, they don't like you labeling them per se.
No.
You know, and I was like, so no, you're right. I don't ask, but I just know by the age group. You know, that she is in, and you have to learn how to interact with them differently. They respect their elders, but because things in many situations, like your children live in other places, your adult children, my daughter lives in another place, they're not around face to face as much. And so, you know, they communicate
differently,
and they use technology. And, you know, Bobby, you're very well briefed in technology because I know what you did with IBM, but I struggle with this, you know, and, you know, I can call you and tell you something, you know, much quicker than it takes me to text it.
I like to hear their voice.
Yeah, me too. I do.
You know, just straight up. Look, just call, say hello, old fart or something.
Right. I know.
I'm old school, you know, we're just used to that. But all in all, where we are in life, our station in life, I was talking to one of our classmates, Stephanie McKinney Guti and Kuti, and you know, here we are, the elders.
Yeah, sometimes, you know, I have difficulty thinking of myself as an elder, but I know I'm an elder. But then I wake up and say, how did I get to be an elder?
I know.
I mean, you know, I'm like, how am I an elder? But, you know, I am an elder, but we are blessed elders because you probably saw it. One of, he wasn't in our class, but he was a star basketball player. He was probably
Io Silver.
You know, he recently passed away, you know, so the fact that you and I are still here, and we know we're still here because, like, my mother in later years, she lived into her 90s, but she did have dementia. So, you know, the fact that we can be here, know we're here, communicate with each other, our mobility might be not what it was, but we still can walk around and do certain things. That is a blessing.
It is. And I look because, you know, far as I'm concerned, I really don't have nothing. I got the knee injury from years ago that I banged up when I came to Atlanta last time, and you know, had to get a walker safe from Glow. Stephanie fixed it up. a little bit of cholesterol, prostate stuff like all men get, but it wasn't no cancer stuff. I just couldn't go for a minute. And like that. And I'm telling you, I get up every morning thankful for my health, because without our health, it pretty much sucks, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm sorry. You see my other half in the background
I see it, Brent. What's up with them new knees? You can walk everywhere, no pain.
Yeah, I have my earphones on, so he
Okay.
You know, I don't know that he heard you, but he waved.
That's
but
good.
yeah, when people ask how was your day, I said I'm blessed because I got up this morning and I'm vertical. Once I got out the bed. So I think as you age, you become more grateful, or you should become more grateful for things. And health is the number one thing that our cohort group has to be aware of in terms of whatever God chooses our longevity to be.
But we just have to be a little bit mindful, because it's going to be the end one day. But as we're moving through, we can help ourselves move through pretty okay. What was I going to ask you? Just at this point of life where you are, how does that make you feel as you just say, man, this thing ran along, and here I am, an elder still in my right man. Look, don't know what's going on with them children, because sometimes I just have to say, okay.
As the emoji does.
Yeah. And just be and learning to be okay with everything. How does that feel, instead of how we used to make stuff be? Now we can kind of just let it be.
Well, first of all, aging is not for the faint of heart.
Truly.
It's not. I mean, you got to be tough through aging, because it's going to happen. And you have no control over that, nor do I think you should have control over it, to be honest.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing I would say. My biggest struggle, I would say, is being able to respect boundaries, but not so much respecting boundaries, letting things go as I interact with my adult child. And I'm not, alone in that. When I, talk to my cohorts, that's one of the things that they talk about. How do you interact? But more importantly, how do you let it go when it's not something that you agree with, but you don't want to impose your views because they have a different view and they may choose something differently. That's one of the things that I struggle with. And, I think that's because, I was an only child. My daughter's an only child. So I just think that that's part of what happens, regardless of how many children you have, but it becomes more intense when there's only one for you to focus on. So you can spread it between more than one.
Yeah, but they know I got plenty to spread, child. Like Gianna, she running from wildfires, and back and forth. Next thing I see is a picture of an airplane she's getting on. I'm like, where are you going? I don't hear anything from her for about 10 hours. Then I get a text back, Portugal.
See, that's what I'm saying.
I'm like,
well, you and I, we were running from, a wildfire at that age. First of all, we probably really didn't know Portugal really existed, except when they taught us geography on the map. And our reaction would be, we got to figure out logistically, what our next move will be with respect to our you know, after the fire. We wouldn't be thinking about going, but that's the way that they respond. And I was like, okay, you know,
that's all you can do.
I see you. What else can you say?
Yeah. But they be cool. Like Aaron,
Yes.
well, she's on her way back to Chicago now because John's parents, he's the youngest.
Okay.
And they're getting up toward near 80, and they got some property here. They need some help. So they're on their way back. But I was out there in Vegas one time with her. She's like, Daddy, why don't you think about moving out here? I said, child, I never come move out here. She's like, why, Daddy? I said, because y'all ain't got no shade. But look, I really enjoyed having you here. You gonna come back again?
I will absolutely come back again. You know I have to love you that I got up and put some clothes on this morning.
I know.
You know, other than my pajamas. And but yeah, I'll come back anytime.
Well,
and thank you for thinking enough to have me on. And again, I want, you know, viewers to understand this is a channel, you know, worth subscribing to and seeing, and you know, get beyond your technological fears. If that's what's keeping you from it, have your child set it up, you know, if you can't, which, you know, they all know how to do this kind of stuff effortlessly. Effortlessly. So thank you again. And I hope you have a good rest of your day, Reverend Bobby. And I hope to see you at homecoming this year.
Well, thank you. Thank you again. You're going to see me sometime. I don't know when, but you're going to see me because Brandon and his wife thinking about moving there. I just gave him a recommendation to a school because they got to come look at school for their children. But while me and Tro reminiscing and loving each other and telling each other how much we're going to see each other soon, don't forget to subscribe. Gospel of Robert, capital GOSPELOF, capital ROBERT at YouTube. You might have to put the @ sign in to get to the page. And from Tro, Janelle, and I, we bless you. We love you. And we demand from the universe that you travel well from here. Take care. See you later.
Goodbye. Thank you.